Hello, this is CNR Extra here on Citi TV. My name is Larte. Coming up. Government to fast-track negotiations with the International Monetary Fund to ensure key aspects of the program are reflected in the 2023 annual budget statement.
A sustainable debt path is a prerequisite for the IMF program. Therefore, the IMF, World Bank, and the Ghana team are currently undertaking a debt sustainability analysis to inform the program negotiations.
Also, Chief Justice Kwesi Enin-Yeboah urges judges and magistrates not to be influenced by public criticisms in the discharge of their duty.
The misinterpretations and misunderstandings of court decisions, regardless of the motive with which they are done and the pressures they exert on you, should not cause you to waver in your fidelity to the law.
Still to come, Central Bank warns defaulters of mobile money loans to make repayment plans with their service providers or risk facing stiffer consequences that could deny them access to credit facilities in the future.
I wanted to pay back, but someone stole my phone, so I was like, oh, I'm not going back to MTN again. I would rather use mine to go and Vodafone like that.
So how would MTN retrieve their money now?
That one, I don't have any problem with them.
And Veterinary Services of Ghana embarks on nationwide mass vaccination against rabies to eliminate human rabies deaths by 2030.
If you are able to vaccinate your dog against rabies, then you are safe. The dog is safe, human beings are safe, lost are not lost.
Details of these stories and more coming up shortly. In studio with me today, Citi News' Hanson Agyemang to help with the discussion. Welcome, Hanson. Good to see you here.
Good to see you, Tony.
I trust you are well.
I'm doing well.
Well, we don't want you to leave out your thoughts as far as the conversation is concerned. You may want to join us with your views and comments via 0550585823, 0550 585832. You can also join the conversation on Facebook as well as Twitter, where this program is streaming live, and then you can drop in your comment in the comment section and read it to the rest of the world. Let's begin with some issues relating to the economy today, because we know that the second leg of government engagement with the International Monetary Fund is still ongoing. We are aware of the current debt sustainability analysis and the discussions of a possible domestic debt restructuring as far as the discussions are concerned. Well, the finance minister has been setting the record straight and clarifying some of the issues that have dominated the engagement so far. He has been explaining at a press conference held yesterday.
Mr. Ken Oforiatta says government will fast-track negotiations with the International Monetary Fund, IMF, to ensure key aspects of the program are reflected in the 2023 annual budget statement.
Now, the finance minister at a press briefing on Wednesday said negotiations have been smooth so far. The following report has more details.
The formal negotiations for a fund-supported program between the government and a team from the IMF began on Monday, 26 September. The IMF meeting will cover a period of 10 days. Talks have begun on a comprehensive debt sustainability analysis with the IMF for a $3 billion support program. Addressing the media, Finance Minister Ken Oforiatta said government is committed to ensuring that a comprehensive package is negotiated with the IMF with the aim of restoring and sustaining macroeconomic stability, ensuring durable and inclusive growth, and promoting social protection.
Having a sustainable debt path is a prerequisite for the IMF program. Therefore, the IMF, World Bank, and the Ghana team are currently undertaking a debt sustainability analysis to inform the program negotiations. In addition, the IMF and government team are working to update the medium-term macro-fiscal framework to inform IMF program design. Also, the government team and the IMF team are discussing policy measures and structural reforms, proposing an economic program aimed at addressing the economic challenges facing the country towards restoring and sustaining macroeconomic stability, fiscal and debt sustainability, as well as promoting durable and inclusive growth and social protection.
The finance minister added that no agreement has been reached with the fund on the parameters of debt operations.
We simply have not reached any agreement with the fund on the parameters of any debt operation, as we are in the process of completing the debt sustainability analysis. Government shall continue to actively engage all stakeholders in a clear and transparent manner as we seek to fast-track the IMF negotiation process. Ghana needs a viable domestic financial system to support its development program, especially in these 3 years with limited access to international capital markets. Therefore, everything must and will be done to protect our financial sector. And there must be room for a win-win conversation through extensive stakeholder engagement with both our domestic and external investors. Ghana has always had a collaborative approach with its partners, and we shall, I'm confident, come out of an historic arrangement.
Well, having listened to the finance minister at that engagement yesterday, I don't know, but it appears he is overly optimistic of a good deal with the IMF, also minimizing the impact of our current, macroeconomic situation, especially because he has given a timeline, and he is also hoping that by the end of November or even by the end of the year, when the budget is, read or presented in Parliament, the discussions will be made available for government to make some input as far as the presentation of the, budget, 2023 budget is concerned. Feasible or far from reality?
Well, I think that it's based on the posture of the team from IMF and that from Ghana. We've seen officials from IMF from time to time reiterate their eagerness to help Ghana get a support program of a sort. But for me, it's interesting how far we've gone with this. You remember those days. Pass E-levy will not pass E-levy. Go to IMF will not go to IMF. You go to Parliament, they fight. Minister of Finance and the Ministry of Information go around the country, have a lot of stakeholder engagement. The Minister of Finance it's very clear that there's no way he's going to the IMF.
But today we are there.
Today we are there. And I think that we have to move beyond that. Now we are there. And it's a good thing because, our problem is very dire. And if you speak to economists, they will let you know that our situation is very difficult. Previously, when governments praise themselves for being able to keep inflation in check, if you go to the streets and you ask the layman, the point the person will say is that
they do not feel
inflation here. So when government was saying that we're able to keep inflation below in a single digit, if you ask anybody on the streets, they'll tell you that inflation here. But now 33%, everybody is feeling it. You go to the market today, you buy something at the grocery shop,
services are soaring.
You go the following day, it's up. So everybody now gets a real life experience with these economic indicators that usually you hear during budget readings and the rest. And I think that is good that the finance ministry has given itself up to the end of December because of how the situation is. But again, we should be cautious and some economists.
Yeah, because, Kessel Atoforsin, he has raised some serious concerns because he thinks that government is rushing. And so if government is giving itself that kind of short period, it means that government will not have any good deal at the IMF. And there are also some economists who believe that the government should exercise some form of restraint and ensure that whatever they are putting forward is something that will be in the best interest of the country. But the debt sustainability analysis is ongoing. And also there are also possible discussions of, a restructuring of the domestic debt. But finance minister said that something of that sort is still not on the table yet.
So what we know is that the debt sustainability analysis, which usually is done by the IMF in the back of Ghana, of course, with support from the local authorities here, the Ministry of Finance. So the debt sustainability is done by the IMF and the World Bank with local support, like the Ministry of Finance and the Bank of Ghana. That will tell us our positioning as to whether or not, as a country, the current debts that we owe, we can't service them, both local and foreign ones. The conversations from non-state actors, economists and analysts within the space suggest that we've reached a debt-distressed position, and the options available now, it looks as though debt restructuring is a must if we are supposed to get the IMF support program. Now, the bigger conversation is in what form this debt restructuring would take. So there's the option of telling your creditors, both local and international, that if you're supposed to pay you in 5 years, we would then now want to extend the period within which you are supposed to pay. Say pay in 10 years or in 15 years. Or there's the haircut conversation, which have been made popular by a lot of economists, which essentially is to tell your creditors that we can't pay. So they need to take part of the debt they owe you, either of the principal or of the interest you are supposed to pay on the loan. Financial platforms like Bloomberg and Fitch have given indications that there are background conversations that the debt restructuring should apply to local banks or local financial institutions.
And that's where a lot of economists are also raising serious concerns there, because they feel that it will make the local banks worse hit.
Yes, because essentially what you're saying is that if we take a bank A, which perhaps has given some amount of money to government, and we know that a lot of the assets of these banks are in government bonds, and for even most of these banks that were saved, if I can put it that way, during the financial sector cleanup, remember the bailout that the government gave to some of these banks were in the form of bonds. Now, essentially, the point is that you are reducing these assets of these banks. The direct impact some have talked about is affecting the liquidity flow of these banks. And for those who have treasury bills, who have stakes in government treasury bills, will be affected. But if you go beyond that, the other thing is that then for persons who say depend on industries, and we say want to develop a country of production and manufacturing. So for companies who depend on these local banks for loans and the rest, will now be a little bit limited, because if the finances of these banks are affected in a way by this. So a lot of economists are simply arguing that if indeed it is the local banks way we want to go, and the understanding is that government wants to use the IMF as an avenue to still reach out to the international market, because Fitch rating us down from CC
and even
to
yesterday,
CC.
the finance minister said that in 2 or 3 years, Ghana will be able to, go back to the international market for some form of borrowings. And a lot of people think that no, because of the recent downgrade by Fitch, CCC, a further junk and all that, within that short period, Ghana will not be able to, consolidate itself to do that.
So that's why it will make sense, or you will see the reason why, if government is taking a decision, it won't want to go to the international creditors and tell them that I can't pay you, when you have the idea of coming back to them in the next 2 years. That is when IMF has been able to help you stabilize things. But for me, I think that the 3 years, the December timeline, it's a good one, but we should be very cautious and look at countries like Sri Lanka and Zimbabwe, who have had the timing within which they wanted to secure a program prolonged a bit. And look deep now into our own local self. And a lot of economists have said this, that the issue about expenditure cut, we should look into that, and misappropriation as well.
So government is not sacrificing. We see a lot of, expenditure in terms of its social interventions. There are conversations that some of them should be reviewed so that government is able to make some savings and all that. But government says no, it still remains resoluted to ensure that it gets all that. But let's see what happens in the coming days, because the conversation with the International Monetary Fund is still ongoing. The finance minister has also given assurances that government will go in for a good deal. Well, away from that, the Judiciary, which is the third arm of government, is in the news once again because the Chief Justice thinks that public criticism should not sway judges from doing their responsibility.
Turn attention to some other stories, and the Chief Justice, Agyemang, is urging judges and magistrates not to be influenced by public criticisms in the discharge of their duty. Speaking at the 2022 General Meeting of the Association of Magistrates and Judges, Justice Agyemang, however, said criticism of the judiciary must be constructive. Citi News' Ni Ayikweokain has more in the following report.
The judiciary has come under criticisms in recent times, with President Akufo-Addo describing it as unwarranted attacks which must be condemned. Speaking at the 2022 General Meeting of the Association of Magistrates and Judges, its president, Justice Henry Kofi, complained about the trend.
We have been attacked, we have been maligned, and all sorts of things have been said about judges. It is my view that evaluating or analyzing judges and their judgment should focus on how judges apply the law to arrive at a result or a decision, but should not be focused simply on what the result might be or which of the parties to the litigation the decision favors. Judges, by the nature of our work, cannot go onto radio, television, or social media to defend ourselves, and this is what our critics sometimes fail to appreciate.
The Deputy Attorney General and Minister for Justice, Alfred Tuayebua, says criticisms against the judiciary have been as a result of distorted coverage of court proceedings by some media firms. He thus called for a collaboration between both institutions to help deal with the development.
The right to record court proceedings is one of the aspects of freedom of speech and expression. Nonetheless, some members of the media fraternity at times indulge in distorted coverage of court proceedings. This is a cause to worry about, since it can adversely influence public confidence in and respect for the judiciary. I'm not by this suggesting that judges should treat the media as hostile. No, far from that. Rather, the media must be seen as an indispensable tool in any modern democratic society. The media is therefore respectfully encouraged to collaborate with the judiciary when it comes to its coverage of court proceedings. This collaboration will undoubtedly ensure that accurate and fair information is made available to the consuming public.
Speaking on the theme, enhancing the integrity of the judiciary amidst the challenges of democratic rights and freedoms, the Chief Justice, Kwesi Enin-Yeboah, urged the magistrates and judges not to be induced in the discharge of their duty by public outcry on national issues.
Decisions of the court have sometimes resulted in an outcry within the society. However, the misinterpretations and misunderstandings of court decisions, regardless of the motive with which they are done and the pressures they exert on you, should not cause you to waver in your fidelity to the law. Yours is to dispense justice and to uphold the rule of law, irrespective of public clamor. As judges and magistrates, you must always withstand such pressures, as anything contrary to that will be a departure from the rule of law.
The magistrates and judges also bemoaned the delay in the disbursement of their allowances.
As I speak, I am told that the fuel allowance for the first quarter was released only last week to the judicial service. Last week. First quarter is January to March. So I cannot even begin to talk about second and third quarter. As for fourth quarter, don't start thinking about it. I think that this is very, very necessary, and the situation where we always have to fight. You will recall, my lords, that even this year, some previous allowances outstanding from last year were paid. And that was because of the instrumentality of the Chief Justice. We had to be virtually dragging the Chief Justice before eventually the ministry released funds. Before the ministry released funds for the payment of those allowances. I think that situation is not acceptable.
As part of its solidarity message, the Judicial Service Staff Association of Ghana, JUSAG, urged the magistrates and judges to also deliver their mandate devoid of partiality.
It is critical for the Judicial Service to invest in reform programs that are aimed at strengthening and enhancing justice. Also, as justice does not look at the origin or the social position of anyone, but determines what is appropriate in accordance with law, I will urge you, the distinguished justices, to continue to be firm, impartial, without fear or favor to any individual, group or class. Justice must not only be done, but must be seen to be done. This mantra should always echo in our minds in protecting the democratic rights and freedom of all.
The Association of Magistrates and Judges has held its 2022 general meeting on Wednesday, and key among the discussions was the issues of recent attacks on the judiciary. Well, the Chief Justice, Justice Kwesi Eninyabwa, urged members not to be swayed by these public criticisms in the discharge of their duties. Reporting from the Labadi Beach Hotel, my name is Ni Ayukwe Okain for Citi.
Chief Justice Kwesi Eninyabwa has advised his men to be more focused and not to be too bothered about criticisms from the public, especially what he thinks that are unfair and, attacks on members of the judiciary. We are aware that recently some people, especially in the public, have been making some utterances against, members of the judiciary. This, the head of the Judiciary Service, the Chief Justice, thinks that people should be measured. He is not saying that don't criticize that, but he thinks that if you want to do that, you have to be circumspect about it.
Well, it's good to hear from the man himself, because former President John Dramani Mahama, at a retreat by NDC lawyers, was very emphatic in his statement that the current state of the judiciary, in his eyes, which is below par, can only be changed if the Chief Justice is changed. Or, in his words, to be fair, if there's a new Chief Justice. Now, indicating that he does not have that level of trust in Chief Justice Kwesi Enin to change the narrative, if indeed there exists a narrative to be changed in the first place. And I think speaking to the matter at least will give us how he also sees this, and clearly tells you that he sees this different from what John Mahama, the NDC, and some other persons within the legal fraternity see the judiciary to be. Now, I think that criticisms in themselves are good, but they should be grounded in law. I don't think that we should, most especially in an organ of the state like the judiciary, in a state of checks and balances, where the judiciary is supposed to play a certain role of interpreting laws and giving meaning to the laws that we make as a people. But these criticisms that are not grounded in law shouldn't be entertained, in my view. I don't think that if the judiciary, any judge gives a ruling and you have a problem with it, and you just come up and say that the judge was not fair in his ruling, we should just take it. There are principles upon which judges give their rulings. And these principles guide us. The day we throw any of these principles away, the day we throw our state, our community into disarray. Now, if you are criticizing them, you should criticize, and it should be grounded in law. But I don't think that this should also in itself mean that the judges can or cannot improve on what they are doing.
Of course, there is always that room for improvement because, look, if you are in public office and you are doing something and people think that there are issues around it and they do it in a very fair manner, you would want to jump upon it and then improve yourself. But in there, the judges were also making some demands over there. They feel that the allowances have delayed and they say they're entitled to it.
Yes, of course, you would say that it's an overflow of the economic challenges that we are facing. And if they deserve it, they should be given. And they play a very pivotal role in our society. So if the judges deserve it, they should be given. And I think that any institution or body that is charged with that mandate should try as much as possible to give them their due. The other thing that came up was from the Deputy Attorney General, Agyemang, who he indicated that these criticisms have heightened because of what he describes as poor media reportage on court issues. I cannot for certain say that there are no poor media reportage on hearings of courts. But what I can say for certain is that we need to improve upon the relationship between the media and the courts. In this 21st century, you go to the various courts, journalists are not allowed to take in their phone.
In some cases, they are even sacked from the courtroom.
And these are not in-camera sittings. These are sittings that are open to the public. Journalists are pushed outside. You go to some courts, the journalists are standing outside the courtroom, literally struggling to hear. And they are not using microphones. Literally struggling to hear. And after the hearing, if you go to a typical big case, after the hearing, no single journalist goes home with his own reportage. They confer amongst each other to at least see that they're on the same page, because one person heard this, the other person heard that, because they are not open to the court. So the Deputy Attorney General, if he's interested in a media reportage, he should also work on the media, on media-court relationship. But this also puts a certain responsibility on media houses and journalists. Media houses should always ensure that qualified people are placed at the courts. The journalists who go there should take out sensationalism. When you are reporting on court issues, what happened is what you report. If you infer beyond what was said,
you have yourself
to blame.
All right, that's Hanson right there with his thoughts on the issue about the judiciary and unfair criticisms being raised by the Chief Justice. Well, the ECG, Anti-Power Task Force, is still going tough on persons engaged in illegal power collection. Yesterday, 10 persons were picked up in the Ashanti region.
10 persons within the Agyemang municipality of the Ashanti region have been arrested for allegedly engaging in illegal electricity connection in the area.
Now, this was after officers of the Electricity Company of Ghana and the Ghana Police Service conducted a joint exercise in the area. There's more in the following report by Citi News' Bureau Chief for the Middle Belt, Edward Oponmafo.
The Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, says the issue of illegal connection is adversely affecting its operations and, more importantly, impacts negatively on its finances. It adds that thefts and illegal connections alone contribute to 20% of the losses the company suffers. It is in view of this that the management of ECG has intensified efforts to clamp down on such activities to minimize losses and enhance efficiency.
Illegal connection is really affecting our operations. Now, in terms of expansion and operating our system, we need a lot of money to be able to, do maintenance and also expand towards new customers that we may find. The cost of illegal connections and theft is about 20% of the total losses that the company faces. And this is very, very serious and is affecting our operations because we do not have the requisite funds to be able to maintain and operate our system. Now, this is coming from the moratorium that our MD gave in for us to be able to bring in all the illegal meters,
or unregistered meters that we have in our system, so that we'll know the power that our customers are consuming. And then
ECG monitoring has been good, and I mean, we've seen the exercises in the Greater Accra region. They've been to a lot of facilities, making the others connections, and it is getting to other regions, and I think that it's a good one, and they should enhance their monitoring. But the other thing for me is that the customer relations, and if you speak to people who have been caught in the web of illegal connection, you definitely get some people who have been to ECG offices to complain. Either their meters consume a lot of the credit they buy, or they have a faulty meter that they want corrected. And
they have been to the ECG office and they are not being attended to. So usually they just remain adamant in following up on these issues, and then the ECG just comes to them and say that you have engaged power illegally. So it's very important for the Electricity Company of Ghana as a utility service provider to be very open to the public. When people come in with their concerns, it's very important for them to address these challenges, because we know that recently the ECG also said that it's been losing out on some of its revenue as a result of, you know, this illegal connection. You see, the serious ones are the people who use it for commercial purposes. They are making money out of it and they are not paying as well. So the ECG has a responsibility whilst going after these recalcitrant consumers. It also has a responsibility to ensuring that our systems are upgraded, they are able to, you know, correct any anomalies and all that, because we can't be losing, you know, a lot of money to, you know, illegal connection, especially because utility tariffs have been increased in recent times.
Yes, and the Public Utility Regulatory Commission, which increased these tariffs, have a responsibility here as well. Recently, 2 days ago, they were in the Western region where they indicated that about 98% of complaints by customers have been addressed. I think that they need to enhance on resolving these complaints by the customers, and to make sure that utility service providers do what they're expected to do.
Well, this is still CNR Extra here on Citi TV. My name is Lartey here with Hanson Agyemang. You can join in the conversation via WhatsApp 0550-585832, or you can drop in your comment in any of our comment sections where the show is streaming live, and we will read it to the rest of the world. But still to come on CNR Extra. Central Bank warns defaulters of mobile money loans to make repayment plans with their service providers, or risk facing stiffer consequences that could deny them access to credit facilities in future. Please stay with us. We have more. You're welcome back to CNR Extra here on Citi TV. If you are owing any of the telcos as far as their mobile money, you know, loan facility is concerned, the Bank of Ghana says it is really coming after you.
Of mobile money loans have been advised to make repayment plans with their service providers, or risk facing stiffer consequences that could deny them access to credit facilities in the future. According to the Bank of Ghana, individuals who have deliberately decided not to repay loans acquired from their service providers will suffer negative repercussions on their credit reports and history. Fred Duho has more in the following report.
According to the Bank of Ghana, a number of network subscribers have deliberately decided not to register their SIM cards in the ongoing SIM card re-registration exercise, with the intent not to pay monies borrowed from the telecommunication companies. The SIM re-registration exercise, which lasted over 5 months, is expected to end on September 30, 2022. The National Communications Authority and the Sector Ministry have indicated their resolve to block all unregistered SIM cards, despite objection by some who have not received their national identity cards for the registration exercise. Some loan defaulters spoke to Citi News.
I do use MTN, Vodafone and Tigo, but my phone got stolen. That was last month, MTN. I was owing, I think, 1,000 plus, and it was stolen, so I don't have any problem with that one.
When you say you are owing to the tune of 1,000 cedis and you do not have a problem with it, explain to us, what do you mean by that?
Actually, I took loan and I wanted to pay back, but someone stole my phone, so I was like, I'm not going back to MTN again. I would rather use my Tigo and Vodafone like that.
So how would MTN retrieve their money now?
That one, I don't have any problem with them. I have no problem with them, so they can do whatever they like. See, I've not registered MTN though, so I'm cool.
But from the Bank of Ghana, they are going to trace the biodata of everyone as far as SIM card registration is concerned. You've not registered though, but you know, when you are accessing the platform or the service, you normally enter your name as reference and stuff like that. So they should be tracing all those people and making sure they pay.
Actually, I didn't use my ID. I used someone else's ID. And the person uses father and mother guarantor to do it. So I don't have any problem with that one. So MTN, I have no business with you guys. Everywhere you go, but
how did you arrive at even borrowing 1,000 cedis?
Actually, when I borrow, I do pay. I borrow, I do pay. I borrow, I do pay. But got to a time I didn't have money to pay the 1,000 plus, so I had to let them put their interest on it. So it was going more. So I had to just like, oh, if this is what they are topping up, they are doing this, so just let me leave it. So my phone got stolen. I was like, thank God.
How desperately did you need that money before you went in to borrow?
I needed it for my school fees. Yes. So when I got the money, I was like, maybe I'll pay an additional money to that 1,000 CD plus that I borrowed. Yes.
You had no source to get the school fees except MTN Momo?
Yes, please. When I'm borrowing from Airtel, Tigo and Vodafone, it seems their process is too long. So MTN was my favorite network, but since my phone got stolen, I was like, I have no business doing with them again.
Are you going to buy another MTN SIM?
No. I won't buy any MTN SIM.
Why are you scared they'll catch you?
Not that they'll catch me. Even if I get a new SIM, I might use my Ghana card to register, but they wouldn't track me.
Which network do you use?
MTN.
Have you registered it?
Nah.
Why?
Because of last time when I went there, there's a lot of crowd there. I have to wait and wait. I waited like more than 2 hours. I couldn't get it. I have to come back home, and since then I haven't went back there. Like we went there, there's a lot of crowd. You have to join line. In fact, the service, the way they even talk to you, crowd, you just feel like make you just go home, crowd. Last time they blocked my own. Later they still open it. I just if they block them.
But Friday is the deadline. Are you aware?
I'm not aware, but they say this month. But I'm not aware that it's Friday.
This month, 30th is the deadline. By the way, how much quick loan do you have on it?
Like, just it's not much. It's not that much. Just something small.
Like how much?
Like 500.
So, like as at now, you've not paid the 500 cedis quick loan on it yet. So, if they cancel it, how do you hope to pay it?
That's why they have to give us time so that we'll be able to register them, be able to pay off. Because even this September ending, it's not only me, but I believe a lot of Ghanaians haven't registered this thing. They are just rushing the whole thing. People haven't even started. Even some people think, I don't think they have gotten their Ghana card already.
But what did you use your quick loan for?
Oh, I use it to... I have a certain problem sometimes ago. I had an accident. I have to take the money and sort some bills.
Times are really tough, but if you owe, pay. Hanson, do you owe any of the telcos?
No.
Are you sure?
I don't.
BOG is coming after you.
I don't owe them.
But looking at this particular story and then listening from the Ghanaians, you realize that they are simply not willing to pay. It's not as if they don't have the means to pay.
It's an attitude thing. And even before you go to, we look at the formal structures. When you give out money to your friend, that's the end of the friendship. That's the end of the friendship. And a lot of people go by the rule, don't give out the amount you can't let go. Yeah. So it looks like it's an attitude of a kind, but it's a bad one that we have to work on as a people. And that's why institutions are charged to force people to act in a certain way. And that's why the level of digitalization that the government is seeking to go in according to is laudable. And we need to make sure that when people go for loans, at least there's a system that we can track where they stay, how their movements are, so that when these institutions who give out these loans to these people, so want to go after them, they can do so. Remember the banking sector crisis. One of the major problems, aside the loan, some of the shareholders who didn't pay, the fact that a lot of the customers who took loans from these companies did not pay also contributed to the problems that we had in the financial sector. And it's a big problem, and perhaps on my level and on your level, it's a moral appeal that we can make to persons who owe, and particularly to the lady Fred who spoke to. 1,000 cedis, you should go and pay.
Please, if you owe any of the telcos, please do well to pay, because the Bank of Ghana says you are losing your credit worthiness. We want to see the central bank make some of its systems robust so that they can go after these persons whenever they try to seek financial help from other institutions. But this is still CNR Extra on Citi TV, still to come. Veterinary Services of Ghana embarks on nationwide mass vaccination against rabies to eliminate human rabies deaths by 2030. Please stay with us for more. You're welcome back to CNR Extra here on Citi TV. My name is Larte. Helping with the discussion today is Citi News' Hanson Agyemang in studio here. We want to hear from you what you make of the stories we've been bringing you so far. You can do that via WhatsApp 0550585832 or go onto our various social media platforms, drop your comments in there, and we'll read it out to the world. But academic activities in public universities may be severely affected in the coming days because 4 labor unions there are making some demands over their service conditions.
The 4 labor unions in the public universities of Ghana have threatened to strike if government fails to uniformly apply the recently increased vehicle maintenance allowance. Members of the union say they are against the decision for only senior members to enjoy the new allowance. The groups argue that this creates disharmony in public universities. There is more in this report.
In the last few months, the government has come under pressure from various labor unions seeking better conditions of service. Civil servants, teachers and other labor groups have all been engaged in an industrial action or threatened to take that option. The latest to threaten a strike is the 4 unions of the public universities of Ghana: the University Teachers Association, the Ghana Association of University Administrators, the Tertiary Education Workers Union, and the Senior Staff Association of Universities of Ghana have called on the government to regularize the adjusted 10 cedis 99 pesos ex-pump rate for vehicle maintenance allowance to reflect for all staff instead of just a few duty bearers. Professor Solomon Nunu is the president of the University Teachers Association.
One would have thought that having the agreement follow through at long last on the part of the employer, that sleeping dogs would lie. And we also expected that if they are to lie, they should remain asleep. But nevertheless, it has come to our knowledge that henceforth there is going to be a disparity in the existing practice, notably the vehicle maintenance and off-campus allowances. The disparities here being that it is going to be applicable only to duty bearers in our universities. This action is not only unacceptable, but creates a class system like the famous George Orwell's Animal Farm, and discounting that the other members of staff and the duty bearers both go to the same marketplace. The intended reversal of the recent upward adjustment from 10.99 to 6.05 Ghana cedis is just not reflective of the economic conditions at the pump, and therefore unthinkable for the employer even to conceive such an idea to do so. UTAG and her sister unions would wish to entreat the employer to tread carefully so as not to mar the already jeopardized tertiary education front, as the labor unions would not countenance such flagrant disregard of agreed modalities of conditions of service.
A member of UTAG, Professor Ransford Jampo, threatens that if government fails to heed the demands of the groups by Wednesday, 5th October 2022, they will lay down their tools.
We are telling the National Security Minister, we are telling the Minister for Education, we are telling the Minister for Finance, And we are telling the Minister for Employment and my own friend, the head of the National Labour Commission, we are telling them that they can look on and wait for us to explode. But this time, the explosion will be more massive because we are doing it together with all the labor unions on the various campuses. So if that is what they want, I thought they needed some peace of mind.
Well, usually when there is labor agitations on university campuses, it's usually one group. But this time around, 4 of them, UTAG, the senior staff, the administrators, and even TEWU. If care is not taken and the concerns these members are all raising are not addressed, we are likely to see a strike that we've never witnessed before.
Well, and this is not surprising because often than not, you hear these labor unions complain independently. And then government will come in, National Labour Commission will come in, sometimes declare their strike as unlawful, go to court and back and forth. And then government will agree to an extent, and only for us to go and sit, and then 3-4 months, we come back to the same
exactly,
issues.
Because if you look at the issues these members are raising, they are usually issues they've been raising in the past. You remember the strike from last year, which they even called off some months ago in March. You remember how it affected academic work and all that.
Certainly. And for me, if government doesn't take care, what this leads to is a loss of trust in government. And most especially in times like this when a lot of economies are facing challenges. You need a certain level of trust and faith from labor unions so that at least there can be some stability at that level. A lot of the IGF that these universities get are from foreign students. And if you look at it carefully, a lot of foreign students, especially from Nigeria, come to Ghana. And for most of these people, aside the experience, is the stability of the academic calendar. And if that is disrupted, with government subventions usually not going as they should, this could affect IGF, essentially affecting the monies used to run these institutions, not to talk about disrupting the entire flow of these students. And already we know what the pandemic has done to the academic calendar.
And in the face of the current difficulties government is facing, every public sector worker is also making some demands. Don't you think these worker unions should just be patient with the government because the demands are coming?
But that's the point I'm making, that they need a level of trust that when they are patient with you and when things become well, you'll be good to them. But the track records does not look that way. And that's why they will insist on their rights or insist on what they want, regardless of what government is saying is the problem. Because they know that if times are hard, the president will take his salary. He will say there's a 20% cut, but he'll still take his salary. They'll take fuel coupon. This person will take this person will take that. So they also demand what they are due.
So essentially, I think engagement and commitment are the words in here. We want to see what government will do in the coming days. But away from education, let's do health, because you know that Ghana is currently battling with rabies cases in some parts of the country. Well, the Veterinary Services Department has begun a mass vaccination exercise.
The Veterinary Services of Ghana is embarking on a nationwide mass vaccination against rabies in its bid to eliminate human rabies deaths by 2030.
Now, the move forms part of a national action plan towards 0 deaths by ensuring all dogs in the country are vaccinated against the deadly zoonotic disease.
According to the World Health Organization, rabies kills about 70,000 people annually. 99% of all human-related rabies cases result from the bite of an infected dog. At least one person dies every 10 minutes from rabies, mainly in Africa and Asia, with over 40% of affected persons being children. Although implemented through control strategies, owners' inadequate knowledge about the disease and the lack of concerted efforts and adequate investment in dealing with the disease have resulted in an escalation of human deaths. As Ghana marks this year's World Rabies Day in Bolgatanga in the Upper East region on the theme, One Health, Zero Deaths, she has pledged to end rabies in Ghana by 2030. Speaking at the event, Acting Director of Veterinary Services of Ghana, Dr. Patrick Abake, called on pet owners and service providers to work in synergy at ending rabies-related deaths in Ghana.
If you are able to vaccinate your dog against rabies, then you are safe. The dog is safe, human beings are safe, lost are not lost, lives are not lost. That is very, very important. That's why we encourage you to vaccinate your dogs against rabies. It's very, very important. And you children, you are the ones who normally play with the dogs. You are the ones who live with the dogs. You are the ones who will send the dogs to the veterinary clinics for the vaccination. That's why the audience here today, this early morning, is very, very important. I'm happy that it's school children who are in front of us today.
In the Upper East region, a total of 39 human rabies cases were recorded between 2019 and 2021, with 8 deaths. Half year 2022, 419 dog bites have been recorded with 1 death. But under what circumstances do pet owners find it necessary to vaccinate their pets against rabies?
I've been injecting them yearly. So the brown one, I think that was January they injected the brown one. So I had to call them this morning to find out whether it's necessary to bring it or not. When it affects a human being, it's difficult treating the person. Even the early stage, the injection is expensive. So I feel it necessary.
A right step by the Veterinary Services Department. My worry, however, is the fact that usually we are always reactionary when it comes to these issues, because if you look at rabies, it's a preventable virus disease, and if you remember the veterinary service upon the outbreak of this particular infection, they raised concern that they are supposed to be doing this mass vaccination exercise on an annual basis, but because of resource constraints and all that, they are unable to do so. And for us to, record 8 deaths as a result of this infection before they are doing this, I think sometimes we have to be proactive. Or Hanson, you disagree with me?
Well, I agree with you, but of course you have to put their concern or their work in perspective. They don't control the funds, so if the funds do not come in, they certainly cannot do their work. When the deaths occurred in the Ashanti region, we heard about the 10 cities per head vaccination that they were taking, and all these are because of resource constraints. So we ought to look at how we fund some of these institutions. But the other conversation for me, I think, is the issue about ownership of pets.
Because we have a lot of stray dogs and a lot of stray animals all over the country.
I don't think that it is regulated very well. People go in, buy one dog, the dog gives birth to 2, 3, and then it gives one to a relative, and then nobody is checking who owns which dog. And these dogs, some families literally do not even cater for the feeding of these dogs. So these dogs are allowed to roam. They know the way back to their homes, so they roam within the neighborhood, and then they come back, try to fend for themselves, and they come back. And what should the pandemic that we've gone through and we are still
reeling under the impact
should at least give us warnings that we cannot leave things to chances. I mean, some of the conversations about the source of the COVID-19, we are all well aware. If we are not careful about how we take care of these animals, these viruses end up, people lose, and you see, eight people. We look at it
and
as
the fatality rate for this particular case is very high when it comes to rabies. People actually
8 people. We look at it as though they are just numbers, but these are human beings, lives, fathers, brothers, sisters, and
who have
breadwinners of family members.
Well, this vaccination exercise is actually to eliminate human rabies death by 2030, as enshrined by the World Health Organization. But that's how we end today's edition of CNR Extra. here on Citi TV. My name is Larte, and I'm grateful to you, Hanson, for joining us with the discussion today. We are grateful for your insight. And so if you want to meet us again tomorrow, it's same time at exactly 11 a.m. here on Citi TV. Please keep watching Citi TV. Indeed, it's your world.